Hey, how's everyone doing? I just saw that Robert Downey Jr. just started a live video. So if you want to head on over and watch his live video instead of this one, I totally understand. But failing that, if you're still here, we're just waiting for Gareth to log in. Aaliyah, how you doing? Give you a quick wave. Oh, there's Gareth. Okay, here we go. Troy Ritchie. All right, baby. That sounded really. Is the genius behind all of our web designs and our logos. If anybody needs any graphic design expertise, send us a DM and we'll put you in touch with Troy. The kid is an absolute savant when it comes to designing cool shit. So, hey Gareth, how you doing, bud?
Good man. You?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for asking. Are we ready to jump right in?
Let's do it.
All right, you got your mic and your Audacity and everything ready to go?
Ready to go?
All right, so counting down from three, two, one, click record. Marvelous. All right, here we go for this week's, I guess, can I say this week's?
Sure.
This episode of We As Start Talking Live. I am one of your hosts, Carl Anthony, and of course, the infamous Gareth Knock. I was about to say Gareth Anthony. Is that how much I love you that I'm calling you my own last name?
Are we getting married?
Well, after the call we just had, I think we should. Spoiler alert. Can we tell the listeners and viewers that we just wrapped up a conversation with two incredible young men sitting in paradise in Costa Rica. We're hoping that they will accept our invitation to be the next, or not the next hosts, because there hasn't been one yet, but to be the new hosts of We As LGBTQ2 Start Talking. An immensely underrepresented community. And I think, I won't mention names, but I think the two guys that we just chatted with, but you and I will talk offline. Anyways.
Yeah, well, can we also say, and just because we need to hijack this a little bit, can we just say if you haven't checked out our posts from the last few days, we have the most amazing collaboration for the month of November. We are partnering up or pairing up for a little Movember. So we're going to have a month of podcasts dedicated to the Movember campaign, so raising awareness for testicular, prostate cancer, and men's mental health. So all of our episodes in November, plus we're also going to be raising some money. We're going to be growing some absolutely gorgeous
Oh yeah,
mows over
the
at
Hulk,
Weas.
the Hulk
So yeah,
Hogan.
just the Hulk Hogan. Oh yeah. So yeah, we're gonna have all that posted. So just look, check out our posts. The links to donate are going to be in the bio. You're going to see a whole load to think about it this month. But just giving a little shout out to this collaboration because it's huge and we're excited. All right.
Yeah, and that's, you and I are not very good at celebrating. I was going to say celebrating the little things. This isn't a little thing. This is a huge fucking thing. But you're right. We need to take a minute and stop and appreciate that, 6 months of work has gone into building this collaboration with Movember. But as much as we're excited about it, I think it's also important to note, and I'm just doing a shameless plug, but I don't give a shit. It's also important to note how many men and women benefit from the Movember campaign. And just, I don't give a shit if it's a dollar. Go to the We As Start Talking Movember page. We'll pop the link when we post this, Gareth. We'll pop the link in our comment section. Gareth's got a page, Scott's got a page, I've got a page. We As Start Talking's got a page. If you can spare like a cup of coffee, like what's that, $3 at Starbucks, you may save a man's life. Like 60 suicides per day. Men, 60 suicides per day. So I will, Aaliyah. But anyways, here we go. Gareth Knock.
All right. So,
What do you want to talk about?
what I want to talk about today, well, you may have seen the topic if you saw this posted previously, or you may have just jumped on. Listening is not enough is the topic today, and this has been spurred out of a few conversations that we've had. Carl, do you want to give a quick little overview of where it kind of sits for you, and then we'll spur off into some conversations around the conversation.
I think, and this is going to sound like a bit of a dichotomy because certainly this Instagram Live is a video experience for those that are joining us via video. But to the listeners of all of the channels within our family around the world, this may seem like a bit of a dichotomy because as much as, yes, of course, we want you to listen to our shows and the stories and conversations that we have with incredible guests from all walks of life. But I think you and I, Gareth, had this catharsis about 2 months ago, is that's not a get out of jail free card. Listening to content, listening to a friend, listening to yourself, listening's not enough. We need to create a heightened degree of accountability within ourselves. And if we don't know how to do that, then within the people that you surround yourself with. So listening's a great first step, but after that, there needs to become actionables. So the world will not change. And whether that's your world in a microcosm, or whether it's the world on a very macro level, the world will not change just by listening alone. We all need to take what we've listened to, absorb it, manifest it, make sure that it assimilates with our own core values and aligns with the path that we're on, and then fucking do something about it. Because if you don't, then what's the point of listening? So that's the synopsis of what this show is about today.
Yeah, and beautifully put. Couldn't agree more. It's the journey, and I want to talk a little bit about that journey and share that in that is also is our journey in progressing listening. So, we have podcasts, we have this channel on Instagram, we have many things, new fun things that are coming down the pipe for We As, and it started with that beginning journey. And, we all made our our footprint on the podcast world, and we started this journey. It's been 18 months, probably just a little bit over now. And it's 3 channels, it's thousands of guests, it's thousands of listens, it's many homework assignments that we set. But we started this journey, and I'll speak for me specifically. I started this journey by listening to the podcast. I'm also big on audiobooks, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And I was guilty of not taking action from that. And, I think me starting this podcast and joining the family of We As on our podcast channel was part of that taking action for me. What have I learned? What have I been exposed to? What have I been able to gain from these experiences? And then how am I going to put that into action? How am I going to continue the conversation? And my podcast is continuing the conversation. So I think we've all been on that journey. You, I, Scott, everybody, in the We As family have been on that same journey, and it's about continual action taking, right? So it's what have you learned? What can you apply? How can you communicate that and continue that conversation? Because that's how learning works, right? Whether you're listening to Stoic philosophers from 2000, over 2000 years ago, and listening to their journeys and their points and their quotes, and you're sharing those in your own method or your own channel, or it's mindset that you've picked up or wisdom you've picked up from, your leaders in your job or other people in your life, the other people that you surround yourself with, and it's sharing those things and articulating them in your way, because your audience, whoever that audience is, whether that's your family, your work colleagues, whoever it is, we all have to find a way to articulate that and put that out in the world, because that's what makes change, right? It's calling somebody on something they said. It's starting a conversation on something maybe controversial. So we've all been on this journey, and we're all continuing on this journey. So I think it's important to understand that we're not here to tell you do something you're not doing. We're here to share this is what we've done, and this is how it's continuing to make an impact.
Well said, brother. While you were speaking, I was trying to think of some examples of individuals, and I'm not going to name specific names. I'm not welcoming that degree of criticism. But thinking of categorically individuals that have listened to, so think of politicians, think of human rights activists or wildlife activists, think of union members, fucking parent groups. Those are all macro examples, but micro examples. Think of a mother or a father or a sibling or a husband or a wife or a partner. all of us have something that we can relate to where there was listening, but listening was part of the process toward change. Like if Martin Luther King, and I said I wasn't going to say names, but I am, but if Martin Luther King, if all he ever did was listen to his community and his constituents and his beloved people of faith, if all he did was listen, we would have never had one of the most profound speeches to have ever been spoken. You know, if so, listening, when we're saying listening is not enough, I want to be careful, Gareth, that you and I we're not implying that we're detracting from the fine, lost fucking art of listening. Maybe this should have been part two, but part one, Gareth, I don't know if you can hear me, buddy, but you're frozen. Part one of the podcast could have been, start with listening, but we're not there yet. So listening just isn't, you got to do something with it. Absorb the information that's around you, whether it's interpersonal or external. Figure out how to articulate that into a manifest action and then take action. Because if not, we're not going to fucking change anything. Nothing. Big or small.
100%. And Leah just put that in the comments there, right? Is that, taking no action, only listening, and no action doesn't make the change, right? Like us. And if you're absorbing that information and you're learning it, but it's not coming back out, right? Like you can listen, and there's so many, amazing skills. And being a great listener is awesome. And you can be empathetic. You can absorb other people's perspective on things and then use that. But it's about it's two-way, right? It's got to be two-way. It's got to be coming in and going out. And you've got, and even if it's not talking, maybe that's not your preferred method of communication, but how are you impacting the world with that? I think it's so, so important. What did Leah say here? I think listening is the first step, but then it's about thinking, what can I do next to make a change? Yes, absolutely. Just, we were on the same page there, however small that might be, and that's so true, right? It doesn't have to be big. Like the enormity of things is what puts those barriers up in life for us. Like when we see that, oh, well, how do I be the pebble? Which you've all heard countless times, is you have to make that little ripple. You have to make that little, that little change. And even if it is just, you're just going to, I don't know, smile and say good morning to people when you're out on a morning walk with the dog. And every time you influence something, because you were responsible for the energy you put out in the world. And that's so, so important. So if we're just taking that tiny thing, you can put a little bit better energy out in the world, that's going to make a difference, right? And if you listening to this podcast or listening to, this IG live, and that is going to influence your energy and your mindset, and you share a little bit of that with the world, that's the first step. That's my dog shaking in the background, in case you wonder what that noise was.
Or excuse me, or perhaps, and maybe this is embracing a little bit of natural narcissism. Maybe the listening starts within. Listen to yourself, and listen to the part of yourself that's the valuable self, not the self-loathing, deprecating self, because that's a voice, at least in my mind, that's a voice that's like, he's got a megaphone. My confident, loving, passionate, evolutionary voice, that one needs to learn how to speak up more. So we also need to listen to what's coming from within ourselves and take action on the right actionables. And I was just thinking about an example. Now, Gareth, you and I have children, and many of our viewers or listeners also have children, but of course there are people that are going to be watching or listening to this that don't have children. But you've been around fucking kids, so you'll understand this example. Can you imagine if there was a parent that always felt like their child was listening to them, but that child never changed their behavior? The parental teaching never translated into actionables. Is it a successful parent-child relationship or an unsuccessful parent-child relationship? Well, probably unsuccessful, because if a 2-year-old is left to grow and gestate emotionally all on their own, they're going to be a sociopath and probably kill people. So it's a rudimentary example, but the point is, listening's not enough. Fucking do something.
Yeah, and you know what? That makes me think as well, that example you gave with the, the listening and, you're constantly giving that same message. And I think we've talked about this before on an IG Live as well, but the is also how we're communicating is a massive part of this. So, you have to take some ownership. Not only do you have to keep listening, because, we know that that's important right now, keep listening. How are you going to digest that? How are you going to communicate that? Like, you're responsible for the energy you put out in the world. You're responsible for how you communicate that. And this reminds me of when I did further educational teaching qualifications 15 years ago to teach further education. And I don't remember a whole lot from that course, but I remember opening the manual on the first day, and one of the first things in there was, there's no bad learners, just bad teachers. So if you are, and I don't like the language around that, it resonated with me and it stuck. And I barely remember anything else from the course, really, but that's one main thing. It's about two things. It's the language you use, but it's how you communicate that. If your child isn't learning something, or you're trying to educate family members on a controversial issue, for example, and then, and another great point, which I'll get to, is you have to be able to ensure it lands. If it's not landing, then you're not finishing a job. You have to finish the job. You've got to find a way. I have this all the time with a 3.5-year-old, right? It's not that behavior's not changing. Is it clearly the way I'm communicating it, the way I'm, trying to drive home that message is not working. So I have to find a new way. It's so.
One of our viewers, and dare I say, one of our most phenomenal supporters and ambassadors, who was also a guest on We As Difference Makers, Aaliyah, just said two things really phenomenal. But I'll basically, it's, if it doesn't translate into action, then what's the point? But she just cited a specific example of a movement that we're all very well aware of right now. We need to learn, we need to listen, but it can't stop there. And Aaliyah, one of the things that you had said was, a lot of people get overwhelmed with what's the first step? What's the next actionable item? So let's say you identify that listening is not enough, and you connect to that. Let's say you need to change, or you need to impact change. Let's say you need to be the pebble. How do you start? Well, in my opinion, for anyone out there that doesn't know where to start, the best starting point is looking at the surround yourself community and seeking accountability. So chances are, Gareth, if you're acting like a fucking asshole, I'm going to hold you accountable for that, and vice versa. So I think the best place to start, to answer your question, Aaliyah, the best place to start is to look within the surround yourself community, and you'll know pretty quick if you are surrounded by like-minded people that are also creating an advocacy for change. Because if it's not received, and if you're shunned and judged and persecuted because you may not know what to do or how to do it, but you want to do something, then you probably need a new surround yourself. Having said that, and I cannot go into any details about this, but here's a quick teaser. Gareth and I are also working on something on a complete sidebar that may in fact be a profound resource for people that don't know where to start. Because really what we're talking about, we're saying listening is not enough and start talking and take action. But really what we're talking about, and Leah, you just alluded to this with the movement that you referenced, really what we're talking about is transformation. So,
yeah, so true, and great points from Aaliyah. And like Carl said, I just want to echo that. A great supporter of We As, always comes with some great info. If you haven't already, go check out our episode on We's Difference Makers from a few weeks ago, because you'll learn some amazing stuff on there too. And we actually have a little exciting project that me and Leah are working on too. So get ready for that coming soon. More information, but I can't tell any more. Oh yeah,
there's teasers everywhere.
I might call you and tell you later, but no one else. Not yet, anyway. I can't.
This is like a bad first date.
I know, right?
You just keep flirting with each other.
I think accountability. I want to go back to that. And actually, we talked about this. And full disclosure, when we do these episodes, we have a topic. We generally freestyle them, but we do have a conversation the day of these lives to discuss kind of where we think it might go, because we come up with a topic which is very organic from our lives and our experiences. And sometimes we share that, sometimes we don't. But we get this organic talking point and then we kind of let it run and we find where it's going to go. And the one thing we both landed on today was accountability, because you can listen. And so my example is I can go out and walk in the mornings, or I can go to the gym and I can listen to an audiobook, and it can be a mindset one. It can be a leadership. It could be one about race. And these are just things I've listened to recently. One about parenting. And I can learn this. I can learn this information, or I can listen to this information. Here's my struggle though, is where does the accountability come from? Because I've got my headphones on, I'm listening to this book, it's going in my head. How am I going to use that? So one big thing I try to do is I try to share that either in my professional environment, if it's about leadership. If it's a parenting book, I'll try and share it with Nikki, my wife, as well, and we'll have a conversation, or I tell her. She won't listen to me for this long, not as long as you do, but she'll listen to little snippets. So I'll say, hey, I learned this cool thing in a book today. Or maybe she comes to me and says, oh, Harley's not listening to me, or something's going on, can you help me? Or something's happening, and I'll come down and kind of help out and support her. Is I'll share a little thing that I've learned from that book. And I think it's about accountability. So by sharing, we create accountability. So, I always put it out as, here's a thing I learned. I think we should both try and do this. So I'm going to hold you accountable. You're going to hold me accountable. Maybe I'll share that with you if it's about mindset, or we'll have a conversation about something I heard. So I think on a selfish endeavor, though, all these podcasts and these IG lives, they're about accountability too, because we're having a conversation and people are listening to us, but I'm listening to you, you're listening to me. We're sharing ideas. We're sharing a conversation. Other people are sharing. And by that, we're holding each other accountable, because we're showing up each week. We're giving our points and conversations, and it's just progressing that continuously, which is the key to accountability, right? It's all being on the same page. So important.
I'm smiling because Aaliyah just stole my thunder, and she said, yes, start the conversation. Well, as everyone knows, the name of this podcast family is we as, and then you enter the suffix, whether it's men, dads, whatever it is, but it always ends with we as start talking. So, that's the foundation is, and Gareth, to iterate your point is, if you can create some vulnerability within your circle of people that you would respect being held accountable by, because I don't, there's, the trainer that I see at my gym who's training somebody and he's doing it completely wrong. If he tries to hold me accountable on how I'm doing my deadlifts, I'm going to go tell him to go fuck himself. But if my best buddy tells me, Gareth, if you say, oh, remember when you said that you're going to be journaling every night, that's going to hit close to home. So the accountability, but you would never know how to hold me accountable if I hadn't started talking and shared with you that I've started journaling. So maybe it's, Gareth, do you remember about 6 months ago, do you remember we came up with that triangle? It was like surround yourself, effort, and I forget what it was. I've got it written down somewhere, but maybe the triangle here, and maybe this is the takeaway. Maybe this is the takeaway to all of the viewers and all of the listeners is the 3 points of the triangle that we're talking about right now is there's listening, there's talking, and sorry, I want to do it on screen. There's listening, there's talking, and there's accountability. Identify when you listen and who you listen to. Identify when you talk and who you talk to. Identify when you are accountable and who you are accountable to. So if everyone within your surround yourself, so let's, I don't know, for the sake of argument, the BBC reports that on average, and I only know this because it's one of the chapters in my book, the BBC did some research. On average, we have 15 friends. Not Facebook or Instagram, but actual 15 friends. So if every one of the 15 people within your surround yourself circle, if they all do that little triangle of accountability, talking, listening, and if everyone can identify what those 3 pillars are of that triangle, and then you share it. And I would curious to know how much overlap we see that, oh, fuck, Gareth, you feel that I'm the one that holds you accountable, yet, I don't know, Joe Smith is the person that you need to listen to. Like we could actually, it could be a really cathartic, and I use that word way too much. I need a new word, Gareth. But it could be a really little experiment.
because that sounds intelligent. Just go with cathartic, I think.
Yeah.
So I just want to add some. I'll add something to that triangle. I think you'd said, it's listening, it's accountability, it's talking, and you were saying like who you're talking to and what you're talking about, right? What you're listening to, who you're listening to. Let's also add in there how. Like, how are you listening? Like, are you listening with an open mind and a wide lens? Are you listening with empathy? Are you, and the same when we get down to accountability, like how are you holding people accountable? What approach are you taking? Are you being a shithead about it? Or are you doing it with care and empathy and trying to connect with that person's struggle to then hold them accountable, right? That's like me saying to you, did you journal?
No. Shut up. For those that are on the Instagram live video, I'm literally flailing around like a circus monkey. But on the audio, you just probably hear me breathing heavy. No, because I love what you're saying. I just don't like what you're saying. So in the middle, can I do it? What's that? In the middle of the triangle, it's not how. Why? Why are you listening? Why are you talking? Why is there accountability? Suck it. Better than you.
Yeah, well, maybe it could be all of those things. It could be in the middle, and then you could still have the how. The reason why I say that's important is because the way in which, and I'm big on this in communication. Like I've spent my life 20,000 hours of coaching in the last 20 plus years. You learn that how you talk. It's not just, I'm having a conversation, because you've got to connect with the words you use, right? Like, are they in the positive? Are they in the negative? Are you talking in a way that widens someone else's lens? Are you absorbing information in the same way, right? And also holding accountability is a big part of what I've done in coaching. If you're going with the wrong approach for accountability, you feel like a dictator. So you have to think about how, the what, the why, the how. It's all important in that triangle, and it's so key. And accountability being the linchpin, in my opinion, because without that, there's too many things. There's too many shit days. There's too many bad nights sleep. There's too many missed workouts or bad nutrition days, or someone cuts you off in traffic. Like, there's too many things to pull you away from accountability.
You can't use that term anymore, by the way.
Okay. No.
Do you know which term I'm referring to?
No.
Linchpin.
No, can't use that.
No.
Is that inappropriate?
Google it.
Oh, okay. I will no longer use that word. I'll Google it.
And I know you mean no disrespect or offense or nothing inflammatory, but it's part of our our sociologically acceptable colloquialism. But yeah, so maybe
every day's a learning day. So
yeah, well, no, so how and why, but I think what I would love to see, and this is the takeaway for me, because I'm going to do this exercise, is drawing that triangle and drawing the 3 points of that triangle, and leaving plenty of space at each point, and writing down some of the core people that are going to be on that point. I mean, I know, even just in the 5 minutes since we've talked about it, I know in my circle, my surround yourself, I know who I listen to. And I know that for them, I'm not the talker to them. I know who won't be held accountable by me. And I also know, so you start to think about who in your life, what point of that triangle do they fit into, and then it helps you better understand the whole philosophy of listening isn't enough. So if you can map it out, I know you're already doodling for what the Instagram post is going to look like tomorrow. You have it right?
Yeah, I'm writing it right now.
Yeah.
My four color pen.
There's never, I don't even know why, when they invented that pen, they should have just stopped making pens. It's the best pen ever made.
Yep.
It's a preschooler's pen, but it's marvelous. So anyhow, I think that's it. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a key takeaway, a key actionable thing for accountability, is knowing your circle, knowing, like you said, right, where's the listening? And, it comes back to a quote that kind of resonates with that is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So you have to analyze, right? You got to see who you're listening to, how are you influencing, how are you sharing that, right? Are you taking information from not being the smartest person in the room to scenarios where you can be the smartest person in the room, and then your job is to talk and communicate, right? When you're not the smartest person in the room, your job is to learn and absorb. So just that resonated for me, but I love that takeaway. The other takeaway that I wanted to give as a little bit of homework is when you are listening to an IG Live with us, when you're listening to one of our podcasts or anyone's podcast, when you're reading a book or you're listening to a book, and you're technically listening when you read a book because you're absorbing information, just not through your ears, through your eyes, but when you're absorbing information of any type, my homework for this episode is going to be simply one thing. Make a literal note of one thing. Every time you listen to an audio book, read a book, podcast, when you're in a lecture, when you're in a meeting at work, like take one thing and have the goal of just writing that one thing down. Have a notepad with your actionable items. And every time a learning experience happens, one thing you're going to do to continue that learning process and make an impact in the world. Yep. And I'm going to do it myself.
I just doodled something, and the listeners around the world won't know what this is, so I'll describe it after I've shown it to the viewers. But Gareth, to me, it's not how or why. So it's still 3 points of the triangle, but in the center of it, it's not how or why. It's this. Surround yourself.
Yep.
Surround yourself is the core to that triangle. And it's talking, listening, accountability. If you can speak to people, if you can listen to people, and if you can hold and be held accountable by people, and if the core of those three disciplines is rooted in surround yourself, fuck me, you're going to live a spectacular life. If the core of that triangle is a bunch of bullshit and toxicity and negativity and awful people that are dragging you down, then those 3 points don't work. But here's some more learning. Did you know that the strongest shape in geometry is a triangle? If you apply force to any side of it, it always has two opposing sides working against that force. So if you think within surround yourself, there we go, triangle. Within surround yourself, if there's accountability, talking, and listening, if ever one of those sides is being pushed against, the other two sides will create a force strong enough to withstand it.
100%. Somebody's been homeschooling.
That's grade 3 math right there, baby.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just something else that, it may spark another conversation. It might wrap it up. But if you've been on today, you've been listening, you listen to the audio version, or you're watching this, the IG Live recording, is accountability in your surround yourself. It's simple. It's inintrusive. Is that a word? Inintrusive. It's not intrusive. It's matter of fact, and it's instant. And you experienced it today. Like, if you couldn't have asked for a more real world, true example, I used a word that I am ignorant to, and it was very simple for Carl just to say, "That's a word you're not going to use anymore. Google it." And if you notice, the instant response was, "Wow, I learned something. I didn't learn it yet because I haven't Googled it, because clearly I'm on my cell phone right now. But I'm going to Google that. I'm going to look into it, and I'm going to take that information, and that's going to help me learn and grow." But it's me being open to it and being in an environment where I'm able to take that, even though it's being broadcast to thousands of people. It's still a learning opportunity that I can take on and that you feel comfortable giving.
Yeah, and you know what, brother? And I know we're using a rudimentary example, but you took that accountability with such grace and such receptiveness, as you always do. And that's really indicative of the fact that I know I'm in that surround yourself triangle. I'm in that triangle. I have the privilege of holding you accountable. I also have the privilege of listening to you, and I also have the privilege of talking to you. You and I have the trifecta. We've got all three components within our relationship. I'm realistic. Not everyone's going to have all three components, but it's kind of like back in the old days when I was in sales. This is 100 years ago. They had a similar triangle, and it's you can have two: fast, cheap, quality. You will only ever have two of the three. You can have something fast and cheap, but it'll be shit. You can have something high quality and fast, but it won't be cheap. Like you see where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
I would suggest that the trifecta to what we should all strive to achieve, and this is part of the accountability, and I love the homework that you just gave, is try and figure out who within your life, I'm going to add an addendum to your homework, who within your life has all three of those points of the triangle within the surround yourself mantra. Like I'm so fortunate. I've got half a dozen people, maybe 10 people, and that's all I fucking need. I don't need 100. I don't need 1,000. We've got followers from around the world, but they're not that triangle.
But the fact that they're listening, right, and they're going to form their own triangle if they haven't already got that triangle, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Like, get your triangle, build something amazing in your triangle with everyone that you have, and then filter that out somehow, whatever medium you use to filter that out, whether it's just normal conversations, whether it's a podcast, whether it's Instagram. Use that to filter that information out. And I mentioned a project that I mentioned earlier, myself and Elia. This is exactly where this is born from, exactly the same thing we're talking about. Get that like-mindedness, that surround yourself. And it doesn't have to be like-mindedness, doesn't mean you agree on everything, because your surround yourself doesn't have to be that. It can be a mixture of everybody. It's good to have disagreement. It's good to have challenges in that. It's good to have people call you on stuff. Build that within your circle or within your triangle, sorry. And then once you've built that in your triangle, is then you've got to find those outlets for it. How are you going to communicate that message? And then how are you going to put that, just spark that fire in one person? Yep. And we have a responsibility of putting the fuel on that fire as well, is then they're going to communicate that, right? It's the pebble effect again. Just put that little pebble out in the world. It builds and builds and builds. And that's how we change the world.
Yep. Because it has to be changed. If there's one thing we can all agree on, whether you're watching or listening, or whether you agree with Gareth and I on many of the things that we talk about week over week, I think there's one thing we can all agree on. The world has to change. And it's not going to change by being passive. It's not going to change by just listening. It's not going to change by not holding people accountable. So fucking nut up.
Yeah, man, 100%. Listen, I think it's about time we wrap this up. We're about 30 minutes plus in. I think we had some really great points. Really loved this conversation. I think it went in the direction that we wanted it to. So just remember a couple of things. Remember to check out all of our podcast platforms. We as men, we as dads, we as difference makers, and then obviously we as Start Talking Live. So please, go on, find our podcast wherever you find your podcast. Tune into our IG lives. We appreciate the support, and watch out for November, because we got a big month at We As in November with all of our November our collaborations and our podcast episodes that are coming your way. So pretty exciting stuff.
The last thing I'll say, and then I'm going to sign off. I can't wait for the We As Start Talking Live in mid-November that you and I do, when we've got just the giant, massive Hulk Hogan mustaches going, and just how few people are going to actually tune in. Where the people are going to click on and go, what the fuck? Sign off immediately. That's it for this week. And love and peace to everyone. As always, Gareth, I love you. And to all you out there, please be the best version of yourself that you can. Please remember, listening is not enough. That's it for now. Gareth, on the count of 3, 2, 1, and stop. Okay, see you, buddy.